Alright, internet, gather round. I need to tell you a story. A story about power trips, petty tyrants, and the beautiful, beautiful sound of a Karen-esque ego deflating like a week-old birthday balloon. This is the tale of how my homeowners association called a SWAT team on a child's toy barn and accidentally declared war on the new chief of police. Spoiler, it did not go well for them. My name is Sam, and I live in Serenity Meadows, a suburban development where the only thing that's serene is the lifeless, Stepford wife perfection of it all. I moved here for the good schools and the quiet streets. I did not move here for the HOA, a quasi-governmental body led by a woman I'm convinced was spawned in a lab dedicated to creating the ultimate HOA president. Her name is Brenda Plachecki, but in my phone, she's saved as Brenda, bringer of bylaws. I'm a single mom. My daughter, Chloe, is 7. Her entire world is horses. She eats, sleeps, and breathes them. For her birthday, my dad, a retired carpenter, built her the most incredible gift, a miniature, red-painted wooden barn for the backyard. It was just big enough for her to play in, with Dutch doors and a little hayloft. It was perfect. It was also, as I would soon learn, the spark that would ignite the Great Serenity Meadows War. The first letter arrived 3 days after the barn was installed. Serenity Meadows Homeowners Association. Office of the President. Brenda Plachecki. Violation notice. Samantha, my address. Code 22C. Prohibited outbuildings and structures. Dear homeowner, it has been observed that an unapproved, non-conforming outbuilding has been erected on your property. Per CCNR Article 22, all external structures, including but not limited to sheds, gazebos, and playhouses, must be submitted to the Architectural Review Committee for pre-approval. The structure in question, hereinafter the red eyesore, is constructed of non-conforming materials, wood, painted a non-approved shade of red, and does not complement the earth tone, natural aesthetic of the community. You have 48 hours to remove the structure. Failure to comply will result in an initial fine of $250, accruing daily. Governed in excellence. Brenda Plachecki, HOA President. I sighed. I'd been expecting something. I emailed the ARC, submitting a formal request for approval and including pictures of a beaming Chloe next to her barn. I explained it was a child's playset. The response was immediate and automated. Request denied. Structure violates Code 22C. See violation notice. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I appealed to humanity. I called Brenda. Brenda, hi. It's Sam from 1428. I got your notice about the barn. It's just a toy for my daughter. It's not a shed or a gazebo. Her voice was like ice cracking. Ms. Sam, the bylaws make no distinction for toys. A structure is a structure. It's an eyesore. It looks like a farm threw up in our pristine community. Remove it. It's in my fenced backyard, I argued. You can barely see it from the street. The use of binoculars for property inspections is within our rights as per Bylaw 1A, she said without a hint of irony. The rules are the rules. Compliance is not optional. I paid the fine, and the next one, and the one after that. But I also started my counteroffensive. I became a student of the Serenity Meadows CC and RS. I read all 223 pages. It was drier than toast, but I found my weapons. I discovered that my trash cans, which were the approved forest green, were placed 3.5 inches too far from the curb, according to a diagram on page 87. I reported myself. The ARC was forced to send me a letter thanking me for my vigilance and issuing me a warning. The pettiness was glorious, but Brenda escalated. The letters became more frequent, more unhinged. Violation. Unauthorized HOA, organic matter in lawn, potential rodent attractant.
Fine. $100.
Chloe had left a handful of craft store hay outside the barn. Violation. Non-approved fauna, plastic horse figurine visible from sidewalk.
Fine. $75.
It was insanity. My neighbors, meanwhile, were divided. Some, like sweet old Mr. Henderson, would give me a sympathetic shrug as he meticulously edged his lawn to the exact millimeter required. Others, like Brenda's next-door spy, Carol from across the street, would water her lawn at dawn with a pair of high-powered binoculars around her neck. It was a neighborhood Cold War. The breaking point came via certified mail. Notice of lien and intent to foreclose. The letter claimed I had amassed over $8,000 in fines and violations. It was a lie. I had receipts, but the threat was real. They were coming for my house over a child's toy. That's when the calm, professional part of my brain, the part one use at work, finally kicked in. The reasonable neighbor Sam was gone. Now it was Chief Samantha Wright of the city police department, and I was on a case. See, I'd just been promoted and transferred to this precinct. I'd been keeping a low profile, settling in, trying to be just Sam the mom in my off hours. Brenda had no idea who she was messing with, and now she had made it my business. I started a real investigation. I documented everything. I filed FOIA requests for HOA financial records. I had quiet conversations with city zoning officials. And then I struck gold. Bylaw 15F. No fencing shall exceed 4 feet in height unless constructed of wrought iron, and even then, shall not exceed 5 feet. I took a laser measurer to Brenda's backyard fence. It was a solid, 6-foot-high privacy fence. Clear, blatant violation. Bylaw 18B. No commercial vehicles shall be parked in driveways or on streets overnight. A quick check of property records showed Brenda's husband owned a plumbing business. His van, adorned with Placzecki's pipes, was parked in their driveway every single night. The hypocrisy was staggering. But the piece de resistance came from the city zoning office. The HOA's own community clubhouse, which they rented out for events, had never been issued a permit for its new patio and was in violation of fire code occupancy limits. Brenda had been renting it out for years. I had her. I had them all. I decided to force a public confrontation. I requested a hearing before the full HOA board to contest the fines. The meeting was held in the very clubhouse that was violating city code. The room was packed. Brenda sat at the head of the table, a gavel next to her water glass, looking smug. "Ms. Sam," she began, her voice dripping with condescension. "While we appreciate you finally seeking to comply, the fines stand. The structure must be removed. We are prepared to offer a payment plan for the outstanding debt." I smiled. "Actually, Brenda, I'm not here to talk about my barn. I'm here to talk about your fence." The room went silent. "I'm sorry," she said, her smile freezing. "Your fence. Bylaw 15F. Maximum 4 feet. I measured. To 6. That's a $250 fine accruing daily for... Oh, let's see the property records. The last 5 years? That's quite a sum." Her face began to turn purple. "How dare you? You trespassed." "I measured from the public sidewalk with a laser," I said calmly. "Now, about your husband's commercial vehicle. Bylaw 18B. Another violation. And while we're at it, I spoke with the city's zoning office. This clubhouse patio is unpermitted, and you're exceeding the legal occupancy right now. That's a city matter." I dropped the printed emails from the city on the table. The other board members looked at Brenda, then at each other, panic setting in. Brenda slammed her gavel. "This is slander. This meeting is adjourned. You are out of order." "No," I said, my voice low and steady, the voice I used to talk down armed suspects. "You are." I thought exposing her hypocrisy would be the end of it. I was wrong. Brenda didn't back down. She doubled down. She was cornered, and a cornered animal is dangerous. 2 days later, I was making breakfast when I saw Chloe run into the backyard. A moment later, she came screaming back in. "Mommy, there are men with guns." My heart stopped. I looked out the window. In my backyard, dressed in full tactical gear, were 4 members of the sheriff's department SWAT team, their weapons drawn and pointed at my daughter's little red barn. I heard the megaphone from the front. "This is the sheriff's department. Come out with your hands up." Brenda and Carol from across the street were standing behind the police line on the street, their faces a mixture of triumph and sheer, unadulterated glee. My professional training took over. Panic was a luxury. I told Chloe to stay in her room, grabbed my badge and service weapon, and walked out my front door with my hands clearly visible. The deputies on the street turned, their weapons shifting toward me. Brenda's smirk was practically radioactive. "That's her," Brenda screeched, pointing a manicured finger. "She's the one. She's been threatening us. She's got a fortified drug bunker in the backyard. I've seen suspicious activity." I locked eyes with the ranking deputy on the scene, a sergeant I recognized from interdepartmental briefings. His name was Miller. "Sergeant Miller," I said, my voice calm and clear as I held up my badge. "Chief Samantha Wright, City PD. You want to tell me why there's a SWAT team clearing a 7-year-old's playset in my jurisdiction without notifying me?" The color drained from Sergeant Miller's face. He lowered his weapon immediately. "Chief, we got an anonymous call. Said there was a fortified structure, possible narcotics operation, threats of violence." I looked past him at Brenda, whose smirk had vanished, replaced by utter, profound confusion. "The anonymous caller," I said, my voice cold enough to freeze hell. "Would that be the woman right there, Brenda Placecki, who is currently in violation of a city fire code by having too many people gathered on this sidewalk?" Brenda looked like a fish gasping for air. She's the police? But she's just a mom." The next 10 minutes were a beautiful blur of professional embarrassment and schadenfreude. Sergeant Miller called his team out of my backyard, their tails between their legs. He apologized profusely. I told him it wasn't his fault. His department had been weaponized by a malicious actor. I then asked him to stick around. This was now a criminal matter. Filing a false police report. Misuse of emergency services. The look on Brenda's face as I recited her Miranda rights on her own perfectly manicured lawn was something I will cherish forever. It was the look of a universe that had fundamentally stopped making sense. Carol from across the street tried to sneak away, but a sharp "Carol, don't you move" from Sergeant Miller froze her in place. The fallout was swift and glorious. Brenda was charged with filing a false report. She resigned from the HOA in disgrace. The local news got a hold of the story. HOA president calls SWAT on Chief's toy barn, and she became a national laughingstock. A forensic audit of the HOA's finances, prompted by my earlier digging, revealed she'd been using HOA funds for personal expenses, including a vacation to a HOA leadership conference in Cancun. The entire board was voted out and replaced with a coalition of sane, normal people whose first act was to throw out every petty fine Brenda had ever issued. We held a community barbecue in my backyard, next to the little red barn. The new HOA president, a lovely guy named Mark who actually understands that rules should serve people, not the other way around, proposed a new set of bylaws. The Chloe Clause was ratified unanimously. It allows for reasonable play structures and gardens, and it limits the power of the ark to something resembling sanity. As for me, well, let's just say my morning commute is a lot quieter. Brenda moved out a month later, and whenever I see Carol from across the street, she gives me a wave that's a little too enthusiastic. So that's my story. They called SWAT on a little girl's barn. They just didn't know they were aiming it at the new sheriff in town. Literally. The moral of the story? Don't judge a book by its cover. And maybe, just maybe, read the bylaws before you pick a fight with your quiet new neighbor. You never know who they might be.